Today I'm telling you one of the coolest, creepiest, most tragic mermaid stories ever, called Agnete and the Sea King, sometimes called Agnete and the Merman. It's a Danish story, so here's what it looks like in Danish. There's even a cool, creepy underwater statue in Copenhagen based on this story, but we'll get to that at the end. The author starts by saying it's a beautiful summer's day hundreds of years ago when things were just as beautiful as they are now. Agnete, the daughter of the lord of the castle near this big, beautiful lake, goes down by the lake's shore to mourn her dead mother. Suddenly, she sees something moving in the water and she thinks it's a fish, but then she realizes it's a man. She says, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And it says his large, dark eyes looked back at her with the sad eyes of a doe, and around his mouth was a strange smile, but he did not answer. Finally, she's like, "If you don't tell me who you are or how to help you, I'll go get my dad. He's an important man." And then he speaks and he says, "No. You're the one who can bring me peace and happiness." He tells her he is the Sea King of this amazing lake, and it has been his kingdom since long before her dad built his castle there. Long ago, the lake was bigger, but it shrank, as does everything that comes into contact with human beings. He says, "Isn't it strange down there?" And he says, "You humans always think that about places you don't know. It's more beautiful than on land. The sun shines through, but it isn't too harsh to burn your skin. When storms rattle the houses up here, it is quiet and still where we are." He's like, "Come with me and I'll show you." And she's like, "No, I gotta get home." And he's like, "Okay, well, if you won't come with me, will you at least give me the lime blossom that you wear on your dress so I can smell it and think of you?" She says, "Sure, of course," reaches out with the blossom for him, and he reaches up and grabs her hand and pulls her under the water. She struggles and cries, but he sucks her under, and at the same moment the sun sets and then the clouds get dark. When she doesn't come home, her father is crazy scared. He looks for her everywhere. They scoured the kingdom. They can't find her. Most people assume she must have drowned in the lake, and he becomes like a shell of a man. But she had not drowned. Turns out, even though she fought it, once she is down with the Sea King, she is very happy. Her fear disappears when he's even more beautiful under the water than he was above. The waves sounded like harps. The light flamed like gold or glowed turquoise. She can breathe under there, 'cause magic. He takes her to a banquet hall and he's like, "We're gonna celebrate our wedding." He plays the harp for her and it's the most beautiful music she's ever heard. He says the first sound made her heart feel like it was going to break. It was so wonderful and painful at the same time. But then the Sea King began to sing. All sorrow and pain vanished and everything was forgotten. It's so interesting to read this in a sense of seduction and kind of the sexual overtones of experiencing that for the first time, but also a mental seduction of going into this new place and then forgetting everything you knew before. She forgets her father, she forgets her mother, she forgets she had ever grown up on earth and looked at the sky. When he's done playing, he says, "Will you be my wife?" And she says, "Yes, yes." And so he puts like a wreath of water lilies on her head and she's his wife. Now, nowhere in the story does it really say he's got a fish bottom. In fact, a lot of art shows that he's got the legs and the parts and stuff. She lives with him for 7 years and gives birth to 7 sons with him. One day when she's alone and her youngest is just a baby in her arms, she can suddenly hear the church bells that have never penetrated the water before. She remembers her father and her former life, and she goes to her husband and she's like, "Can I please go up to the surface just to see them one more time? I miss them so much." He says, "Okay, but remember to come back by nightfall because you can't leave me and your 7 children behind." And she's like, "How could I ever leave you or my children? I love you so much. I'll totally come back." So she goes up and she's really confused at first. The sun is really bright to her, but she smells flowers and grass and all these things again for the first time, and it starts to come back, and she follows the bells to the church and goes inside and can smell the incense. She sees her father dressed like an old knight, crying with his head in his hands. He's never gotten over her loss. She stands there just looking at him for the whole service at the entrance to the church, and then suddenly the whole place gets dark and all the saints on the walls turn their faces away from her, and she looks around and her husband, the Sea King, is there. He says, "Hey, you've been away for too long, come home." And she suddenly just starts sobbing. She doesn't want to leave. And he says, "Hey, your children are longing for you." He's super emotionally manipulative. He's like, "Your baby is crying and crying. It won't stop crying until it sees its mother." Finally, though it says that her face is white with pain, she says in a strong voice, "They'll have to wait in vain, her children. You too can wait in vain for as long as you want. none of you will make me return to your realm. Then she kneels on the floor and won't look at him, and he begs her to look at him, and she won't. Finally, he just has to leave. The saint's face is turned back, the sun shines, and she rises up, church is over, and her dad sees her. She runs to him crying, throws her arms around him, and she's like, "Father, I'm home and I'm never leaving again." And hand in hand, they went out into the warm sunshine. Clearly, this is partly meant to be read as a Christian allegory, right? She gets seduced away from God and the church and her father and goes to this pagan realm where she is unable to remember her former life. Even though she wants to be there and has ties there, she chooses to forsake this new life she found and go back to God. But you can't help but read it and feel like it's really tragic. I get morally why she needs to make that decision, and she did get captured against her will in the beginning. The audience is all for this girl making the right decision, choosing what she wants to do, and yet you feel bad for those 7 children. But that is common in Selkie stories and Swan Maiden stories, or when women get abducted by supernatural creatures. When they leave their children behind. Which brings me back to this really cool bronze sculpture that has been called one of the least known works in Copenhagen. Made in 1992 by a Danish sculptor and photographer, and they show the merman and his 7 sons with outstretched arms begging Agnete to return home. Here's a better view of it, because apparently when the tide goes in and out, you can see them more. And it's just beautiful and tragic and heartbreaking and just an amazing piece of art. Like the story, because however you read it, we can't live in 2 worlds at the same time and have to make a choice about which one we're going to stay in permanently. As always, check out my book, Dust Spells, a reimagining of the 12 Dancing Princesses, and my podcast, Folktales and Fairy Lore. Link is in the bio.